This is The Competitive Edge with Steve Sisler. Welcome to The Competitive Edge. My name is Scott Britton, and I'm here to help you answer a question that we all have. How can I get an edge in my business and life? Each week, we're going to uncover how some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs, entertainers, and thought leaders get an edge so you too can reach your full potential. Do you want more unique ideas and tactics like the ones we're about to share in this episode? Then you're going to want to do two things. The first is to subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes so that you don't miss out on new ideas from future conversations. After this, you're going to want to go check out my main site, lifelonglearner.com. When you enter in your email address to join the Lifelong Learner community, you'll get access to my most advanced strategies to stack the deck in your favor. Again, that's life-longlearner.com. Do you think if you understood how your brain worked and why you behave the way you do, you'd be better equipped to perform at a high level? If the answer isn't a resounding yes for you yet, that may just change after today's episode. I'm honored to have Steve Sisler, founder of the Behavioral Resource Group and behavior expert, to take us through a deep dive on the power of profiling and how we can use it to level up our work, relationships, and overall performance. Now, there's a lot of behavioral profiling tests out there, but in my opinion, the real power is not the test, but the person who's deciphering your results so that you can better understand yourself. Steve has been recognized as having an incredibly unique talent and uncanny ability to do this all over the world. And today, we're going to talk about this overall practice as well as use me as a guinea pig to demonstrate the real power here and just Steve's expertise. Now, me and Steve have never spoke before besides email, and before our call, I took multiple tests that Steve is going to review live in this episode. Whenever I encounter things like this, I'm always a bit skeptical, but I have to tell you, Steve's insight was spot on for me. He told me things about myself I didn't even know that now make perfect sense in hindsight. And what's cool is with this acute understanding of myself, I'll be able to make better decisions throughout my journey, no matter what I do, which is where the real value in doing this type of work comes. I'm so excited for this episode. Steve is just an amazing talent, and you'll really understand how mountains can move in the wake of self-understanding after you do this type of work. And hopefully it might even encourage you to do some behavioral profiling work on yourself so that you can really understand your core strengths and how you can leverage those to increase your performance and results in whatever you decide to do. So let's go ahead and dive in and hear from Steve Sisler. Steve, what's going on, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Excited for this discussion. And maybe we can just start by talking a little bit about the type of work that you do with people and companies.
Okay. Well, I'm a behavioral profiler, meaning I work with individuals, corporations, mainly entrepreneurs, people that own the corporations, mostly smaller businesses. And I put them through about a 36 question questionnaire, which gives me a behavioral framework and their worldview. And once I have that, they actually come in a set of numbers. Once I have those numbers, then I help them understand how they're wired, probably why they're wired that way, what they'll tend to do in any given situation, in stress, under pressure, who they work well with, things of that sort, what they should and shouldn't be doing in order to maximize performance. I started this company about 10 years ago, and I'm in 18 nations now.
Whoa. Global, baby.
Yeah, it got bigger than me very quickly. And it's because I have a knack for it. And so people just get excited about it and they tell somebody else, and you know how that goes.
Absolutely, man. That's amazing. And why is this self-awareness about your particular view of the world, how you operate, important for enhancing performance?
Well, one of my mantras is do what you are and you'll never work again. And a lot of people, you know, they have ideas and things they want to do, or somebody told them, here's what you should go to school for, like a parent. Funny, in America, most people change careers 3 times, and then the last time, what they end up doing is not what they went to school for. And so it's because it takes them that long to figure out who they are and what they really want to do. What this does is it really cuts to the chase. And it just shows this is how you're wired behaviorally. This is how you think. These are your emotions. These are your passions. And this is what's going to work for you better than anything else. And people that find these things out, sometimes the lights go on in Georgia. Other times it's a confirmation. But I've had hundreds of people tell me that once they got this information, it actually changed their lives.
Now, what happens if your particular profile isn't necessarily in alignment with the vision that you had for your life? Can you change the way that you behave, or is it best to try to swim with the current?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that it isn't in line with the vision for their life, because the profile is actually a representation of who they are as an individual. Now, some people want to do things that maybe they're not really wired for, but I just spoke with an individual in Boise. I was doing a conference out there, and he was in a particular, place in his life, and he wanted to do more within that scope of interest. And you know what? It was not what he was wired to do. And this is what's really interesting. When I told him that, he just looked at me, and it was like, for the first time, he realized, you're right. It doesn't work for me very well, but I keep thinking it will. And I said, you should be doing this. And I gave him some more options, and he couldn't write it down fast enough. And I mean, his eyes welled up, and he saw, the forest for the first time, through those trees. So really, a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm helping people rediscover who they actually are, but maybe forgot.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work surrounding this whole idea of like unique ability and kind of along the same lines of what we're doing here. And I've certainly enjoyed the process of like this rediscovering thing, because at least for me, as a young guy in his career trying to figure it all out, I feel like it's so easy to just get sucked into these prescriptions that other people give us for like what success looks like, what we're supposed to do, how our careers are supposed to unfold. And
Right.
a lot of times that's when we get taken off track.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a guy tell me one time, I did his profile, and I started to brief him, and I said, you're really not a leader. And he went, what? This is what I do. This is how many hundreds of thousands of dollars I make. This is how many people I influence, all these different things. And I said, I don't care. It doesn't make you a leader. I said, you're an influencer. You are one who inspires other people. And if you try to move out of that, you're going to find out really quick that's not your sweet spot. And immediately he was like, oh my God, you're right. And anyway, it went on to affect him in such a powerful way that he just cut out of his life these other things and just solely focuses on what he's super at. And he's doing extremely well now. And so sometimes it just takes going to the doctor and saying, here's why you're limping, son. You've got a fracture right here.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. And all this kind of falls within this framework that you call the DISC profile, correct?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different kinds of profiles out there, but they're all gathering the same kind of data. I like the DISC because it's simple, straightforward, a small amount of questions to the point, and there isn't anything you won't know about an individual when you have this and what's known as a PIAV model, which is their worldview. And so super simple. Like I've taken other people's profiles or assessments by other companies or what have you, and looked at it and then took that information and deciphered it for them. My niche is reading these things. And so, that's kind of what I do. But it's really powerful because it just deals with the 4 primary emotions: mad, glad, sad, and scared. We all have those 4 emotions. Depending upon the intensity of each one on a scale of 0 to 100, it'll determine how you're going to act. And then why. So really powerful.
Well, I'm excited to hear mine, which we're going to go through in a second. But maybe before that, at what point in someone's life, maybe maybe look around and say, you know what, maybe I should take one of these profiles because I'm trying to do this and it's just not working.
Okay. There's different scenarios where I use this. One of them is relationships, partners, not necessarily in business, but in life. Um, Once I work with an entrepreneur in his company, I always end up working with their family, um, because, kids, college, what do I want to do with my life? All this kind of a thing. Um, that's good places to use this. Team building is a way to use it. I My main thrust is entrepreneurs and helping them hire the right people the first time, because the character of the kingdom emanates from the character of the king or the queen. So that kind of becomes a trickle down effect into an organization. So the culture really is its people. It's not your mission statement. That's something everyone's trying to live up to, but people live down to themselves, rather than living up to an ideal by nature. And so once you understand who's in there and what's going on, you've got a culture, whether you like it or not. And once that culture is defined, it can be changed or understood. And then you bring people into that culture knowing exactly where they can fit. So that's mainly what I do.
So I'm thinking right now out loud, and basically, let's say like you as a CEO behave a certain way. You need to understand how you operate, and so that you can put the pieces or the correct pieces around you, so that the company has the best chance of succeeding.
Yeah. Well, I had a company. He kept trying to hire a particular person. It was marketing and sales direction. I think they went through 8 hires. None of them worked out. The person either quit or they fired him. I'm talking about the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And then he met me, and then I found him somebody. And within 3 months, he was vice president.
Oh, nice.
And so he's now running the day to day, so the entrepreneur can do his thing. The problem, I don't want to get into the problem, but there was an issue that kept being repeated. And I finally looked at him and said, the only common denominator in these hires is you.
Truth.
And the light went on. And no one, for better or for worse, would tell him that. I don't know why. But I get paid to tell people the truth.
Give me the truth, man. Lay it on. Dude, you know what? Honestly, that's so valuable. I mean, one of the things me and my friend, my roommate Justin, were just talking about is like, we really value our relationship as friends because we can actually be totally honest with each other.
Exactly.
And that accountability there makes us better men, makes us better leaders, makes us better friends. Yeah. And I just feel like today, for whatever reason, our society is just, I feel like we've gotten soft and we oftentimes are just scared to tell people how it is. So you need people like yourself that are literally paid to do that.
Yeah.
In certain situations.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And, I enjoy doing it because, the reason why I get away with it is because I really care. I didn't start this for the money. That's not why I entered into this thing. I went to seminary. So, my whole life is really about helping people to as best I can. And if telling them the truth is going to help them, I will risk being fired to do it. I had a client up in Massachusetts. This goes back about 6 years, maybe even longer. I can't remember how far back this was, but I went in there and told the owner the truth, and he got up and cussed me out and walked out of the office and slammed the door and left me sitting in there alone with his wife. She looked at me like an Aborigine staring at a Ferris wheel. And she was like, what do we do now? And I'm like, let's just go to lunch. So we went to lunch. We came back. We went into their cafeteria at their business. And I sat down with the guy and started talking to him. And to find out, he was adopted and all these different things started coming out. He was bawling at the table. I walked him through it. I had invoiced him that morning for some other work I did that week. And the invoice was about $5,000. And then at the end of the day, they called me to the office and said, we want to pay you now, because typically they just mail a check. So they paid me, they handed me an envelope and they said, aren't you going to open it? And I'm like, what? So I opened it up and it wasn't 5,000, it was 10,000. And I
Wow.
said, this invoice is double. They said, yeah, we wanted to pay you what you were worth. Thank you for telling us the truth.
That's an amazing story, man. And I just love the conviction and integrity that you approach your business with.
Yeah. I mean, I risked it all to tell him what I knew he wasn't going to like hearing, but I knew it was the best thing for him. And so I just jumped off the precipice and told him. Um, and that's when I realized when people know you care, it qualifies you to say anything that needs to be said, period.
Wow. That's money, dude. I like
Yeah.
that. Steve, so, I think now is an opportune time. Maybe we can review my test results. And just for everybody listening, me and Steve have never met each other. We have spoken for 5 minutes before this conversation. And I think that this can be a really valuable tool to learn a little bit more about how we can use profiling to enhance our performance, as well as, learn from Steve about how he might reads people and uses these emotional drivers to really understand the people that are around him. So Steve, you wanna lay it on me, man? You wanna give me some truth?
Yeah, no, it's great. What I'm looking at is two different patterns that you come up with: a natural pattern, which is your authentic self, and then your adapted pattern, which is you working. We all change our behavior usually when we're working or when we're out and about. I mean, if you're a careless person and you go to work to build bombs, you're certainly not careless there, so that will show up. Um, and so when I look at your profile, I see what's known as the influencer, which means you're a real strong, limbically driven person. Now, when I'm talking right now, I'm talking about your authentic self. So authentically, being your natural self, you're very limbic driven, which means the limbic system is the emotional center of the brain where we get fight or flight from. In other words, you don't like winning because you love to win. You like winning because you don't want to lose, which is a different motivator. It's actually stronger. Um, and so the influencer can really connect with people really well because you're connecting limbically. In other words, there's an emotional connection. And I like to tell people relationships are primary, not instrumental. Um, and when we have influencers, usually relationships are primary with those people, not instrumental. In other words, you're not in it in order to get something and then you're done. Um, so the relationship is the end, which all the means are leading towards with your style. You're also extremely flexible, which means you can be very impatient because all impatience is a sign of extreme flexibility. Um,
Hmm.
so, as a very flexible person, like a Corvette, you could turn off on the exit once you're upon the exit, even though you're still going 70 miles per hour without flipping the vehicle. Some people, if they need to turn off the exit right when they're upon the exit, can't do it because they're in a tractor trailer. And if they tried, it would flip over. So they have to go to the next exit, get off the road, get back on the highway going in the other direction, get off, get back on, and then put their blinker on 100 feet before the exit, downshift, get off the exit. You're already home, you see, and your
Steve, I
opposite
like you,
style
man.
missed the turn. Okay. Which is why if you have a lot of support people working for you and you make a decision like we're going to have a meeting Friday at 10, and then on Wednesday you walk in and say, oh, I changed my mind. You just get off the exit. They can't get off the exit with you. And you say, I'm going to have the meeting this afternoon. Well, you just flipped 3 trailers if they're that style, and you won't know it because they won't tell you.
Now,
Uh,
does this mean that I have to have, because I'm very flexible, that the best type of people for me to work with on something are people that are flexible as well?
yes, because now you need people that are more predictable because of your unpredictability, because they will help you because your style is to pull the gun out and fire it before checking to see if you even have any ammunition in it.
That's true.
Okay. And so when you do that, if you have somebody say, whoa, 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 did you check the gun? Then you're like, oh, thank God you're here. I left the bullets at the house. So you go back and get them. The people that are extremely flexible won't do that. They won't know either. They'll sit there with you wondering why it's not firing. So although they are necessary, you have to have an awareness that they need more preparation than you do. That's all. So you don't want to get what works for you. You want to get what betters you, or else you end up staying where you always will be and never growing. So sometimes we need thorns in our sides. In other words, the reason why the body experiences pain is because it saves our life.
Sure.
But a lot of times we don't want that pain. Also, you're very independent, self-willed, and stubborn, which, again, can be a good thing. You do things by the book, but it's your book. Rather than if you were building a house and you were going by a set of plans, and on the third page you spilt coffee and you couldn't really read it, and you're putting doors in the bathroom that day, and you can't see what size they are, what you would do is look at the other pages and go, well, gee, every other door in this house is a 2.8. Those probably are too. So you put those in. You see, your opposite calls the architect, and if he's on vacation, they wait.
Yeah, I find in the absence of clarity, my move is to always just take action.
You make a judgment call. That's right. And you're probably pretty good at it because you're very intuitive. There are some people, they would never do that because they don't want to tear the doors out and do it again. Because you're so quick, you can put the wrong doors in and tear them out before the person who puts the right doors in the first time even picks up a hammer. You see what I mean? In other words, you have two speeds, fast and faster. When you're working, it gets crazy. You get extremely dominant, which means you get extremely decisive when you're working. And you also become very logical. So when you're working, you turn into a machine. When you're at the barbecue, you can be the life of the party. But when you're working, you get very matter of fact. You get very intense, and you get extremely high focused. And your answer to everything is almost like just, how do I get a bigger hammer? Like that becomes the end all. And so very, very powerful style. It's like get in, get out, or get run over. I call it the rhinoceros. They run 30 miles per hour, but they can only see 31 feet.
Steve, have you been watching me for the past couple months in secrecy? Because you're so money you don't even know it, dude.
Really?
Yeah, man. You are describing me to a T right now, which is so cool because we don't even really know each other.
Yeah. Now here's something interesting about you that I find very interesting, and I haven't seen this in a while. So this is
oh man, now you got me excited.
Okay. You, in your attitude framework, you want to control your own destiny and the destiny of other people that will have an effect on your destiny. Okay. In other words, you don't only want to control where you're going, you're going to want to control where other people are going if their decisions affect where you're going.
So what is an example of that manifested into the real world?
Okay. An example of that is, let's say you're on a sales team and you've got this quarter to make a certain number. And if you do, there's a $5,000 bonus in it for you. Okay. Let's say there are 4 people with you on the team and you have to do this as a team. And you've got 2 weeks left and Bob decides he's taking a vacation, which now could affect your numbers. That's going to be a real problem for you.
So anything that affects my general well-being with other people involved, I'm really going to try to lead or cajole these people to get on board with me.
Just look at it and go, that's the breaks. You can't fight City Hall. You're not going to do that. You're Han Solo.
So why is this important for me to understand?
Because, again, what ends up happening is if you're not careful, it, in other words, here's the deal. Let's use a car as an example. And we'll use an emotional image. You don't want to get in the car unless you're behind the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It doesn't mean you won't get in the car, but you want to be behind the wheel. So when you get to that car and there's somebody behind the wheel, you're going to get them out of there. Okay. How you do it can be one of two ways. You'll charm them out like Bill Clinton would, or you'll command them out like Donald Trump. You can do both, depending upon where they are in your scheme of things. In other words, your style will bend over backwards to help somebody who's doing everything in their power to help themselves. But if you're doing everything in your power to help somebody else and they don't care, they're goofing off, they're not putting in the energy of the time, and you know they have potential and they're not utilizing it, you're done. Like pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think one of the hardest things I have tolerating is laziness.
Yeah. So if you got a lazy person behind the wheel, you'll tell them to get out. If you've got a hardworking person behind the wheel, you're not going to tell them to get out. You're going to tell them differently. And so either way, you're going to drive. And so what ends up happening is if you're not careful, I'm not saying you do this, but about 82% of the time, your style can fall into this. In other words, it's sort of like you never let go of the wheel. Are you married?
Nope. Single,
okay.
Baby.
Okay. If you were married, and you may do this even with other people, friends, when somebody comes to you and says, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened today, and they're starting to tell you a story and they're upset, we listen for three reasons. Either we're listening so that we can direct and control, we're listening so that we can agree or disagree with what they're saying, or we're listening only to understand where they're coming from. By nature, you listen to either direct and control or agree or disagree. So if they're saying, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened, as soon as they get into the story, you go, I know exactly where they went wrong. This is what you're thinking. So you're waiting for them to finish so you can tell them what they should have done, and this will never happen to them again. Because you're a fixer. But there are certain people that if you do that to, they won't come to you anymore because they didn't come for a solution. They came for empathy. And you're a fixer, you're a doer, you're intense. And if these things happen to you, you would deal with it instantaneously. You don't have a closet of issues. In other words, some people, you do something wrong, they mark it down, they put it in the closet, and they think silently, keep it up. What you do is if I did something wrong to you, you would say, what did you just say? In other words, you deal with it in the instant. And then because of that, you go to the closet tomorrow, there's nothing in it. Because
yeah, it's kind of funny.
As soon as it happened, you dealt with it. Because you live in the instant, not on the constant. And so if you're dealing with a person who lives on the constant and you operate in the instant, you lose them. You see? And now you're going to be attracted to a constant. Someone who's got their feet on the ground, rock, predictable style, the even keel, steady Eddie type style that's extremely reliable because it makes you feel safe. But they will be attracted to you because if they rob the house and try to take the kids, they know you'll kill them.
Yeah, that's probably true.
If you have, you'll do it. You won't even hesitate.
Yeah, I will wage a war for things I care about.
You see what I mean? You will do that without thinking. And so that makes that person feel extremely safe. You also probably have an above average IQ. I see you're very not only limbically driven, you're cognitively driven. Somebody who might like watch the History Channel, how it's made, marathon, that kind of a thing. Because your brain would rather be taught than entertained. And so you're very big on learning everything that's new. The only way to scratch your itchy brain is to learn something you didn't know before. So you're always creating new neural pathways. Um, you're also a very black and white thinker. You think in terms of either or more than you think in terms of both and, which is a me conflict. Meaning you appreciate systematically doing things a certain way, the way that works, this and that, but you're also a super risk taker. It's sort of like understanding why we have lights at intersections and appreciating that. But if it's 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, it's a ghost town, there's no one around, and the red light is really long, you'll probably go through it.
Yeah.
But you might think to yourself, what an ignorant time to have this red. Why isn't it just yellow blinking this time of night?
I'm pretty sure I've done that multiple times.
So what ends up happening is that's the me conflict. You understand why it's there. You appreciate the authority, all that. But yet when it comes to your own personal behavior, you can trump it if need be. That's the Rhino.
So it's okay. This is cool, but yeah, this isn't serving me. So we're going to have to make an adjustment here.
We have to do something different. And so you can break the rules and justify the breaking of them really well, and then convince others to follow. It's called social proofing. You will provide the social proof that it's okay to go through the intersection and everybody will follow you.
Steve, you're making me fearful of becoming a cult leader.
No, cult leaders have similar patterns because they basically minister to the limbic system in people, not their logic center. Jim Jones was famous for this. And so, again, this isn't about good or bad. It's just what your your superpowers are. Also, you make more money by accident than probably some people are trying to make on purpose. As a matter of fact, looking at your profile, it doesn't even look like making money is your goal. It looks like it's probably a result, if anything.
That is true. I'm actually really poor at basically optimizing my income.
Yeah.
Because I just don't care about these little tweaks. I just want to keep creating and building.
Car.
Yeah.
You're the driver. But you don't care about getting my car washed here or there, even though the other one's $7 more. But you might go there because of who runs it or because of some other circumstance. But you're also a team player if the people know how to play. And you're also empathetic, but not to a fault. In other words, I'll help you, but, you got to learn how to catch your own fish. You have that ability to help people along and then remove the training wheels so they can ride themselves, whereas some people, they never remove the training wheels because they love being the person holding the bike.
I feel like I get really impatient if I have to hold the bike too long.
You do. And so it's either you learn how to ride the bike or you get somebody else to hold it up because I've got things to get done. And so that's entrepreneurial. But it's not the financial side of entrepreneurialism. It's the leadership side. So you have a very strong leadership graph. So you would make a great consultant, thought leader, that kind of a person. And you are very magnetic. And so you have also 3 fears. Number 1, fear not being liked. Number 2, fear, I said earlier, failing. Number 3, fear being misunderstood. So when you talk with people, typically they will come away, number 1, liking you, number 2, feeling like everybody just won something, and number 3, knowing exactly where you're coming from, which makes you the great communicator. And so that's really powerful because it's very persuasive. And you can turn your anger emotion down. Dial it down when you need to and dial it up when you need to. Some people, it's either up or down. And you have the ability to regulate it, which is like a gift. You can turn it's like a light switch. You can turn it off, you can turn it on. Very powerful.
I feel like I honestly am never angry. But I might just be disguising anger in some other emotion or
Well,
thought
naturally,
pattern.
you're not an angry person. Naturally, you're an assertive person. Naturally. But when you're working, your anger emotion climbs. Now, you got to think about the anger emotion. The anger emotion isn't what everyone thinks it is. The anger emotion is just being decisive. Um, it's a speed. It's quick. In other words, I out of 100, my anger emotion's 100. Okay, yours is a 48. But when you're working, it's an 80.
Mm.
Okay, so when you're working, you shift gears. It's sort of like going from, the expressway to the Daytona 500.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like when I'm working or when I'm not working, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, let's have a good time. I'm focused on
Yeah,
having a good time. But when we're working and like you make me pick my head up from my computer in the middle of something important, I want to
yeah,
rip your face off.
that's right. So with you, it's called work hard, play hard, but in the right order. So if you were working and I knew you were working and I wanted to talk to you, I worked for you, I would need to send you if you said, Stephen, do you have this ready for me? And if I don't have it ready, rather than making this huge excuse, I would just say no, period.
Hmm.
Because you can look at that and go, okay, no. All right, when will you have it? 3 o'clock. Not, well, yeah, you're not going to want to do all that. So I would be right to the point with you every single time, right to the point. If I had a problem, I would have that a couple solutions on my mind to add if you needed it. They have to be right in my back pocket. But I can't just come to you and complain. That won't work.
Yeah.
So knowing that about you would enhance our relationship, increase our communication, and ultimately the bottom line. Just because I
And
know how to deal with you.
and now this is where your work and these profiles come into really optimizing the performance of organizations, I imagine.
Oh yeah. I mean, I had a guy, he's like, the boss never talks to me. He never answers my emails. And I looked at him, it was like reading a novel. And I said, he's a dominant. You're a passive. And I said, you're also wordy. And they're not. I said, condense everything into one sentence. That's impossible. Well, then don't email him because that's what you got to do. So he figured it out. He had to. And he called me a couple of weeks later, answered his email for the first time since he worked there.
Yeah. A
So
lot of
now
these,
communication happening. He wasn't even reading them before.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of these things that you're saying remind me of things that I've observed about past people I've worked for, where
Mhm.
people in the organization are like, "Oh, so and so doesn't like me." And it actually like the person is a very loving person. I think he likes everybody. He's just a doer. And it's
Yep.
like, don't mess with me
Yeah.
when I'm trying to build a company.
Yep.
And if you do, like, come to me in a way where you're maximizing like our short time together.
Exactly. See, when you're working, you're all task oriented. When you're not working, you're people oriented. So when you're away from responsibilities and deadlines and all that kind of a thing, then you do things through people. When you're working, you have no problem doing something in spite of people. Because by nature, you think if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. So if you're not careful, you might be thinking, dang, it's cheaper to pay that guy to stay home,
Yeah.
in a sense. Like you have that ability to do your job and somebody else's at work and make money paying them to stay home. Like that could happen with a graph like yours. And so what ends up happening is if you're not careful, you might take on things that could actually be delegated, but because you love to do, you might not be thinking that.
Yeah, I find relinquishing control, although I'm getting better at it, in a
Yeah.
lot of instances I'm just like, by the time I execute that, like by the time that I delegate this and create a process, like I could have executed this better than anybody else could have.
That's exactly right. Now, here's what you need to know. You don't want to keep control because you're a control freak or ego or you don't trust anybody. You want to keep control because you love working. You love doing the impossible. You love just putting forth energy into things. You love it. So it's not, if it wasn't for the, that kind of a thing, it's not that. You enjoy doing it. You're like a one-man show.
I am right now.
But I mean, that's the way you are. And you might be better off being that, because it would be so difficult. It's like giving up a baby that you've loved for 5 years for adoption to give tasks away that you enjoy.
Now, could you, let's say like you wanted to create something that was bigger than yourself, right? So you wanted to eventually create a big company.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just, with this in mind of my propensity to want to just execute and do things and whatever, just instead of like trying to do it all myself, just really intentionally calibrate with this natural proclivity that I have and make sure that all of the tasks that I'm so hungry to do are just like hiring people, bringing on, getting the right puzzle pieces in place instead of actually doing the task itself, but I'm still doing, and now I'm just attuning it to with my natural style.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the question was because it kind of turned into.
I'm just wondering, like, okay, now that we have to understand our models of ourselves, can we just figure that out? Like, can we just figure out how to use that models to still accomplish what we want? Because like, I'll be totally candid. Like, I don't want to be a one-man show, like entrepreneur my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build companies. And that's going to require some delegation and some other things.
It's going to require letting go. It's going to require, putting your ideas into a larger pool. Maybe getting investors, trusting people, bringing, people in to do that, and fully trusting them, which means to the point of failure. In other words, I'm giving this to you and I'm no longer doing it. So you're not the coach running alongside the player, waiting for him to drop the ball so you can run in and grab it. You're ignoring that now because you gave it away. This is why it's important that people hire people with extreme competences in the area that they're, hiring for. Because what ends up happening in most companies is they end up giving somebody title authority, but they don't have functional authority. In other words, this person invested a lot of money with me, so I'm going to make them VP, but they don't do VP. They don't know how to be a VP. They're not even a people person. But because I feel like I owe them, I'm giving them a title, but they have zero authority. Nobody follows them because they're not good at what they do. They just have a big pocketbook.
Right.
Or this person's a manager, but he doesn't know how to manage. Managing people is a job where we manage people. That's why I wrote the book, There's More to Management Than a Big Desk. And so, because everybody's hiring people, giving them a title, but they've got no authority. So if you're in a car accident and you can't feel your legs and you're laying in the street and the police come by and they put up the tape, they stop the traffic and they got to move your body. And then some guy shows up on a bicycle, about 39 years old, all sweaty in sweatsuit. He says, I'm a spinal surgeon. Can I help? Who's got authority now?
Yeah.
When it comes to you not feeling your legs.
Yeah.
He has no title, though.
Yeah.
But he's got all the authority. He's got more authority than the police do. Now, if that cop is secure in who he is, he'll look at that guy and say, thank God you showed up. I didn't know what to do. I don't want to hurt this guy further. Tell us what to do and we'll do it. So now they're submitting to the functional authority who doesn't have a title. They have title authority, but no function in this particular area. So he says, here's what we need to do. They move the body. Some companies will say to that guy in the sweatpants, I don't care who you are, go stand over there. I'm in charge.
And that sounds like a recipe for failure.
Well, absolutely. So we have companies where you get cops trying to move bodies and they're leaving the spinal surgeons over on the sidelines because they don't have a title. It's like the movie Good Will Hunting. He's the janitor, but he's the smartest guy in the school. He's got no title, but he has every bit of the function.
Yeah.
And
So
it is at work. So what we want to do is marry title with function. So I got title authority, but I'm backing it up with functional authority. Therefore, I'm respected in the organization. People look up to me and enjoy working for me because they're learning something. There's nothing worse than having an English teacher that can't spell.
Yeah. So, looking at my particular profile, like my best thing that I'd be able to do is just go and recruiting people with functional and title, people that have the capacity for functional and title authority.
Absolutely.
And then just giving it to them, be like, listen, I'm not a coach. I'm just a guy that gets you on my team. Yeah. And you got to figure it out. And that's awesome. And I'm going to go keep finding players.
Yeah. And you're a motivator too. I mean, your natural style is a motivator. You could motivate far better than you could probably manage because you're thinking, why don't they just do this? Because that's what you do. You know what to do automatically, but you probably don't know why you know that. And this is where people like you struggle, because if I told you, hey, I want a 2-year plan on my desk by Friday, you probably don't even know where to begin. But in 2 years, will you be there? Absolutely, you'll be there.
Right.
But you don't know how to tell me today how you're going to get there, because with you, life typically unfolds. In other words, you don't draw the plans of the house before you build the house. You just grab a hammer and lumber and run out into the field.
True.
See, and you start figuring out as you go. So people like you, they come to a company and they hire them and they sell them in the interview. Yeah, they can do it, but then they want a plan. They want metrics, and they crumble. They can't do it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm like unemployable. Unless I'm,
so am I.
Unless I'm driving like something within an organization, which even then, who knows? Yeah. Man, this is fascinating.
Hires me to coach them. I say, listen, I don't have a plan. I'm telling you, before you even hire me, I do not have a plan. I'm going to feel my way on this, and I'm going to get you where you need to be. If you can't trust me, hire somebody else.
Yeah.
That's how I do it, because I'm not going to have anybody going, how come it's not looking like so-and-so's coaching plan? I'm telling them right up front, that's not how I do it. I wing it. I know how you're wired. I know what you think. I know all that, and we'll figure it out together. You just keep talking. You tell me what's going on, and I'll tell you how to fix it. And we go, and it works every time. But I have to tell people that's the way it's going to be, which is what you would have to do based on your style, because we're very similar.
Yeah, I'm a wingador, that's for sure. So I'm curious, like, are all these natural proclivities that you've learned about me through this profile, are these things that reference experiences in my life have developed? Are these things that I'm just wired this way from the day that I was born?
Okay.
Why are why are the things these way?
Okay. We're all born with what's known as a cardinal trait, which is overriding emotions that override the others. So, if I've got 3 kids, they're all in the same house, raised by the same parents, everything's the same, but my daughter was super independent in the beginning, and then one son was very compliant. And it's just like, wait a minute, how come they're so different? And they're like one. Because they're born with that. And then the environmental influence comes in and polishes what already is. And so the larger degree of what creates a behavioral pattern is the environment more than the DNA. Because if you were raised in a fairly decent middle-class family where you had dinner every night at the table, you'll come out one way. You take your same personhood, exact replica of you, put it in a family with an alcoholic father, an absentee mother, and you're going to be a different person by the time you are 18. The first 8 years matter the most, because that's when the concrete is setting up. And so we all change over our lives, but we all have these cardinal overriding things in all of us. Now, as a high influence, you decided that, you're going to charm your way. And then when you get into situations where it's important to finish, you got deadlines, it's important that, you this and that, you become a bulldozer. And it's probably because it worked early on.
Yeah.
In other words, the only tool one might have in his bag is a hammer, because when it mattered, that's the tool he used, and that's the tool that worked. So that's what we use for everything. Now, when what we really need is what I call the gun cabinet. Some people have a BB gun, and it's the only gun they have. In other words, your style can kick in the front door with a shotgun, but another style sneaks in the back window with a jackknife. But
Yeah.
that doesn't work every time. You need all different kinds of guns, from a BB gun to an elephant gun. And you got to know when to use them. The people that are able to use different guns for different game kill more animals and have a more diversity of trophies in their life. But the people that only have one gun will never experience hunting a bear.
Got it.
They'll never do it. They can't, you see? And so sometimes we have to help people, you got to give them a bigger gun, put it up against their shoulder, show them how it feels, kind of walk them through shooting a double barrel shotgun. And yeah, it knocks them down, but you get up, it's fine. And after a while, they're like, I can do this. But if nobody ever did that, they'd never attempt that weapon. And so they become what we call conflict avoiders. They have a difficult time saying no. They end up doing more than their share, and they secretly despise it, but say nothing. And over time, it breaks down and becomes a problem.
And those are more people that are of the constant variance than the instant.
That's exactly right. And there are more of those than anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate passive aggressiveness. It's just such a recipe for contempt.
Now, there are places these people can be in that are wonderful, and we got to have these people. Styles like you put the planes in the sky, but they keep them there. And so it's important that we've got them, but people have to understand how they're wired, why they're wired that way, and what it means. Because what you don't want to do is get in a situation where you can't function. I mean, if I'm a mechanic, I have no business working on human brains. I can't be doing brain surgery if I'm a car mechanic. But some people, that's where they find themselves. Why? Nobody told them. Nobody informed them. They don't understand. And so they live a life of frustration because they're trying to use a wrench on a brainstem. And that's not what they do. That's not even how they're wired. The greatest thing, I've had people tell me, I don't know how to tell this guy I got to let him go. I said, believe me, he's going to be relieved. They're like, how can you even say that? And then they let the person go, and I talk to them later. They're so glad because they couldn't tell them they even wanted to quit because they didn't want to let them down. But when they got fired, it was a relief.
It's so fascinating, like how somebody would choose to serve another person's, I don't know, like just will to continue to stay employed than their own destiny, than like what they really want. They'd rather get acceptance than really control their life.
And some people, they're natural born helpers. I'm a natural born doer. Matter of fact, I don't even want to help anyone. Now, that sounds terrible, but it's not what it sounds like. It's like, don't you have feet? Help yourself. That's how I think, because that's what I do. Like, I dropped my BMW this morning off at the mechanic, and it's only 2 miles. So I walked home. Like, I just wanted to walk this morning. It was nice out. I could use the exercise, whatever. But plus, I'm not going to make somebody take me or get me a ride or whatever when I've got 2 legs. Well, why would I ever do that? So if somebody's like, I'm going to the mechanics 2 miles away, can you pick me up? I'm thinking, why don't you walk? because that's what I would do. But I have to realize you can't do that. Say, why don't you walk to everybody? So I look at their profile, I think of their behavioral framework, and I would say, would you like a ride? Because I know they would never walk. And that doesn't make them bad and me good. It's just the differences. When you understand the differences between you and somebody else and you respect that difference, and then you act in accordance to that difference, oh my God, your life changes and so does theirs. Imagine everybody on a team in a business doing that, understanding how everybody's wired and respecting the differences, and then making decisions and having interactions based upon what's best for the people they deal with. That changes everything. I had a company that hired me a couple years back, and they did everything according to what I told them. Not everybody does that, but they did. They were up 40% in 1 year.
Whoa.
They changed everything. Like who works with these people, how we hire, everything changed because they were just getting bodies in because they were growing. But it was a problem. People aren't getting along, the productivity was low. And then they realized, what am I doing? And I'm like, yeah, number one, I said to him, working for you is extremely difficult. So we need people that can take it. We need people that have thick skin to work in your organization. You can't hire, touchy feelies because you're a cactus. So let's get taskers in here so they can just be like, that's just the way so-and-so is. Doesn't even bother them. But you got girls going home crying on the way home because of the way you are, thinking you don't like them. And that's a problem. Your productivity's down, way down. And they changed it.
One question that I have is once we understand ourselves and our models of the world and the way that we can operate with optimal performance, how do we just kind of keep this top of mind and make sure that we're attuning everything we do to it? Because I find like it's really easy for me to have a conversation like this. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like a Rhino.
Yeah.
And then I just go and do my life like how I would always do it. Yeah.
Well, it definitely helps when you start making adjustments, you see the benefits. It's like when I was young, I was beat up a lot in grade school, and my dad made me lift weights in the basement after dinner every night. And then I'll never forget the day I walked in the bathroom. I think it was 9th grade or something, to comb my hair. And a kid looked at me and goes, "Are you working out?" And that day changed my life. The day I was noticed that I was putting in all this hard work is the day that made me want to keep doing it. I eventually became a bodybuilder. But the point I'm making is that solidified it. So once you see a result from your paying attention to who you are and who you're not, then you'll capitalize on it for the rest of your life. It's like a car battery. You all have a positive and a negative. But nobody goes into the car and breaks the negative post off the battery so it'll run better. That's stupid. You need that negative part of you. You need that part that isn't what you think it should be, because it's what makes what should be so important. And so, like me, there's one thing I do really well, and that's all I do. That's it. And I'll be busy until I die because I'm focusing on what I'm really good at. Your graph typically blooms in your late 40s.
That's a long time, man.
Yeah, I know.
Shoot.
About 47, 48. You're going to go from what we call buckshot to a bullet. But it will take you that long to figure it out. That's not a negative. You'll have a fun time, believe me. You don't do boring, so you won't notice it. Logic is only logic in hindsight, not foresight. In other words, you ever been driving somewhere and somebody goes, "Hey, take this left." You're like, "What the heck are we taking this left? It's a shortcut." No, it's not a shortcut. Yes, it is. And then you take it, and then you're like, "Dang, that is a shortcut." Now it makes sense when before it didn't.
Yeah.
That's what happens. That's how your brain's wired. And so it'll make sense when it needs to, and you'll appreciate the past. And it will, the second half of your life will blow away the first part of your life because of your graph.
Dang.
So you got
I feel like my life's pretty sweet. So that's cool news.
It is cool. And you'll bloom late, but you will bloom great.
Is there, just selfishly, sorry for everybody listening, is there somebody who you know that is like a person of influence that has a similar graph to me that I can kind of check out?
Uh, Gosh, I've got thousands of these. um,
It's okay. No worries.
yeah, I can't think off the top of my head because you can imagine what's going in my brain right now as you say that, because I'm trying to be more exact. Um, I mean, I could later give you that information, give me some time to think about that. But again, um, you have a classic pattern of uh, of visionary. You're a visionary style. You jump off the cliff, you build your wings on the way down.
Dude, one of my favorite sayings is jumping without a parachute. Like I always
Yeah.
just like been pretty much
Okay.
my strategy, and then I'll
Yeah.
figure out how to like pull ripcord or make
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
at some point on the way down because
And you
that's when
don't
I'm
want to
most
change.
resourceful.
You don't want to change that, Scott. So some people will try to tell you, you can't be so sporadic. You can't be so um, what we call spontaneous. But that's what makes you successful is your spontaneity. It's sort of like typically your style, the way you take a test in college is wait till the last minute, cram all night and get an A.
Yep.
Or, reading a book. You'll read 4 books. You won't finish any of them. You'll read some or most of the chapters in it, but then the next day you could talk about it like you wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
That's you do everything. And that works for you and it should. That's how you're wired. You're wired for that. So putting you in a cage is like putting a lion in a cage. You can't do it. You can put a hamster in a cage because that's a passive, but you can't put a lion in a cage. It'll go nuts. It'll just walk in circles until it goes crazy.
So
So
I
you
can
need
have
to be
some.
spontaneous.
Hmm. So I can have some peace that my resume looks like a Mexican jumping bean.
Yeah, and it should because that's where you shine. So you just need to be in situations where you're calling your own shots, you're making your own hours, and you're running at your own pace. And if anyone tries to regulate that for you, you had might as well don a straitjacket and try to get into a swimming race.
Mm,
Won't
that's a
work.
powerful visual.
You'll drown in that. You can't do it. So if I was to hire somebody like you for a company, I'd say, now here's how you need to work with them. Say, there's your office. See you next week. And if they can't do it without you, you have no business hiring them for that in this kind of a role. They need somebody who's like you that knows what they're doing and trusts them indiscriminately to get it done. And a lot of times you got management, they're micro managers because they don't trust people. And usually, unfortunately, it's because they themselves are not trustworthy and they project it on other people.
That's very interesting.
As a matter of fact, a person who will use coarse language in an uncomfortable situation is probably more truthful.
Hmm.
So
I
we're
can
looking at
totally see that.
signs. We're missing a lot of cues with people. And so, wind you up, let you go. That's your thing. And that's
Yeah.
why you find yourself in whatever situation you're in now, because that's what works for you. And if you're going to be working with other people, it has to work for them too.
Yeah. This is great, dude. This is fantastic. So people are listening to this and they obviously want to know, okay, cool. I'm glad I heard Scott's little profile. What about me? Like what about my life? How can I understand myself and my behaviors and my natural tendencies to really figure out like what is the best environment to have the maximum performance?
Yeah. Well, I tell people do this only if you think you have to. I don't recommend people do it for fun
I think it might cause
because
some people to overthink.
it causes a lot of things. They don't want to pay for it, number one. Number two, they don't respect it enough. The value is based upon the depth of need. If you need answers because you keep doing the same thing and you don't know why you're doing it and you don't know why this is the way it is or whatever, you're going to get them with me. But if I'm a guest on a podcast, and I've been on several, I'll get calls and emails and people want to do it. And then they're like, well, in a couple of months, I'll get it. They're not interested. And they think it's interesting. That's not good enough. You got to be, I've got to find some stuff out, and then when you find out, I had this done for me. My brother-in-law introduced me to this years ago, and I did it. I had a business for 18 years, a different one, and I had hit the ceiling. And I wanted to do something different, but I was too afraid to do it. And a profiler, one of the best in the world, happened to be the one I got. And he looked at me and he said, "You will never fail." And I'm like, "How can you even say that?" He goes, "Why don't you list for me the time you were in a situation that you couldn't get out of? I'll wait." And there wasn't one.
That's pretty powerful vote of confidence.
Yeah. He said, "So tell me you don't find a window whenever time the door shuts." I said, "No, I do." He goes, "I know, you always find a way." And he said, "You'll find your way here." That was a Friday. I took out a loan on Monday and changed careers.
Dude, I feel like we're very similar in some ways. I mean, I don't know. I just am such a hip shooter as well.
Yeah. Now, these are some calculated risks, but they're intuitively calculated. They're not calculated on paper.
Yeah.
You see? And you're the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, just for people listening out there that maybe don't like the value, it blows my mind how people don't make investments in themselves and think long term. Like understanding yourself and the dividends that's going to pay over the course of your career, and even just the peace that it will provide you is far more worth any, getaway weekend or couple nights out at restaurants or whatever it is. And just for myself, like one thing that this has really helped me with, I'll share with everybody, is people keep asking like, why don't I just make an obvious decision around like some of my projects? So like this podcast, like figured out a way pretty easily to get it to the top 10 of iTunes business, then decided to kind of cool back a little bit. Like all these courses I do, they're dominating and I could just keep making them, but I decided I just didn't want to keep doing it. And people are like, why aren't you just like doubling down on the thing that you like built and just like build it bigger?
Yeah. Well, what you're doing when you talk about, having these projects and people saying, why don't you double down? As you're doing these things, you're discovering yourself. This is why I said you'll bloom later. These are doors you're walking through and you're like, you don't like the decorating in that room. So you keep walking. And people will look at you and go, if I were you and I was doing it, this is what I do. Well, great. That's not my wiring. That's yours. And so you just keep going, because what's going to happen is you're going to settle on something here at some point, and you'll have everything in your past is going to be the gunpowder behind the bullet you become. And so once you hit, your halfway point, you're going to be, a real force to be reckoned with, because you've been around the block. And all that's going to be able to empower you into something. Right now, it's like everything, but it's going to become something. And when it does, boy, will it be something. And that's what happens.
I got chills, dude. So Steve, if people are more interested in this, they want to get the profile done, they want to maybe have you analyze their profile, where should they go? SteveSisler.org.
Awesome. SteveSisler.org.
Man, well, I cannot recommend people go and do this enough. Steve, this has been absolutely fantastic, man. And it's just amazing how many lives you're changing with just bringing this self-awareness to people.
Dude, I couldn't do anything else. And I'm so happy that you've got something out of it. It's real meaningful to me. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Before we finish up with today's Mindshare, I just want to say thanks for listening to another episode of The Competitive Edge. If you enjoyed the ideas in this episode and want access to future conversations, the best thing you can do is subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes. If you haven't done that already, right now is the best time to take care of that and get on board. And while you're there, if you feel like this show has made a positive impact on your day, it'd be great if you could leave us an iTunes review so that more people can find the show. Now, I know we covered a lot in this episode, and there might be a few key ideas or tools that you want to remember. So we went ahead and compiled all of the notes and links mentioned from this conversation for you on lifelonglearner.com. That's life-longlearner.com. Alrighty, let's go ahead and dive into today's Mindshare. All right, what an amazing episode from Steve. I selfishly perhaps enjoyed it a little more than everybody else, but nonetheless found it incredibly fascinating and spot on. And I think, one thing that's really just on my mind right now is just kind of something we touched upon briefly, and that's really this idea of self-exploration. And I'm 26 years old, and I've had, 5 different jobs that all have completely tangential relation to each other. And I think that is very uncommon. And what is funny about kind of this notion is that, like, what I know to be true is that when people figure out what they're really good at and they really love, that's how they become like top 1% at something. But for whatever reason, we've been trained as a society, as young people, not to pursue discovering that and really prioritizing that above all else. Like, nobody says, yeah, you know what? Just like keep trying things and rapidly iterating until you figure out like exactly what you love and lights you up and glows, that you can be top 1% in the world at, that you can achieve mastery at because there's going to be continuity because you love it so much. Nobody ever says that. Instead, we're told to go work for this smart person and stay at the job for 2 years, or else your resume is going to look bad and all these things. And I just have to say, like, maybe this isn't cut out for everybody, but I've certainly felt incredibly served just pursuing what I call a utopian mindset. And that's just try to figure out what you think like your perfect ideal scenario would be in terms of your work-life relationship. And then just go do that. Go pursue that with zeal. And it might not work out, and you might not make a lot of money, and things might fail, or they might be incredibly successful. But what you will have for sure is a better understanding of yourself and where you should focus your efforts, what you like and what you don't like. To be totally candid, that was why I moved to Brazil. I wanted to go live the 4-hour work week. I wanted to live abroad. I wanted to, have this experience of being like an online thought leader dude with information products and online marketing. And I did that, and it was cool. And you know what? It turns out, like, at least now, like that's like not my ideal setup. But I would have never known that unless I did it. And now that I know that, I can move forward with greater confidence and conviction because I have better understanding of myself. And that is way more valuable, in my opinion, than any, fat paycheck or bonus. Maybe it's because money isn't the main driver for me. Because what's cool is the faster that you get to that 1% area of your life that you really just love, that you're so ready to double down on, that means you have more time to get good at it. You have more time to get in the sweet spot. And that's not only more happiness, but that's also being able to become just world renowned because you just have more time to really sharpen that spear. So I just wanted to share this with young people. And I understand there's certain constrictions that I don't have, like kids to take care of, or a dog for that matter. But for people out there that do have some flexibility, like, I really encourage you to just, the fastest way to figure out whether you're going to like something is just to go do it. I was talking to a friend of mine who has a venture firm in Boston, and he's thinking about bringing on a young associate. And we have a very similar philosophy. It's like he could deliberate and think about this as much as he wants, but the fastest way he's going to understand whether this is additive to his business life and personal happiness is just to go do it. It's just to start experiencing it and see if he likes it. And that's really the truth. And so, I encourage you, like, if you have an inkling for something in your life of doing something, like, just go do it. Like, go do it in perhaps even the smallest way possible to test whether that's what you like. And if it turns out you don't like it, like, move on, rapidly iterate. the faster we fail, the sooner we're going to get to success. And I believe there's just one guy who said that, who has a pretty big company called Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg is who said that. And I think he's doing all right. So anyways, that's just kind of what's on my mind today. And I just appreciate you tuning in, listening to Steve blabber about my life. And hopefully you came away with just a few ideas that you can take and apply to your own. And again, I encourage you, if this is something you're willing to invest in, if you, like me, see that the residual benefits, the long-term benefits that come from really understanding yourself, how you operate, and then calibrating your habitat and company and interactions with others around that, I think this is going to provide incredible benefits throughout the entire life. I encourage you to invest in it. It's pretty fantastic to really know yourself so that you can know how to behave. All right, I will see you next time on The Competitive Edge.